Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to start with the last element of directing, that is communication. In this video, we'll be taking up the meaning of communication and process of communication. Now let us see what is communication. In communication, there are minimum two people required, beta. It is a two-way process of exchange of ideas, facts, information, opinions, beliefs, emotions from one person to another. That means in communication, minimum two people are required. It can be more than two, but minimum two people are required. Communication can be done in written form. It can be done orally by words of mouth. It can be in the form of pictures, that is pictorial communication, and it can also be done through actions, our body language, our gestures. It is derived from the Latin word communis, which means common. Communication is derived from the Latin word that means common. Common here means there should be a common level of understanding between the sender of message and the receiver of the message. Okay, that is what I mean to say by common. It means receiver should understand the message in the same sense in which sender wants him to understand. That is the underlying point of communication, that is common. Okay, now let us go through the concept of communication. It is a process of exchange of ideas, information, views, facts, beliefs, opinions, news, feelings, emotions, etc. Anything you want to share with anybody else, that will form part of communication between or among people. Between or among people. Between means minimum two people are required. Or among people. There can be more than two people, beta. For example, a teacher is giving a lecture in the class to so many students. So teacher is sender and the students are the receiver. There are more than two people involved in communication. So it is a process of exchange of information, ideas, beliefs between or among people to create common understanding. This is the very important element of communication, that is common understanding. Common understanding, again, it means the receiver should understand the message in the same sense in which sender wants him to understand. Sometimes there might be certain gaps between the understanding of the receiver and what the sender wants to convey. For example, a teacher is asking his or her students that tomorrow roll number 1 to 10 will submit their notebooks for correction. Okay, fine. Next day, what happens? Roll number 1, roll number 2 and roll number 10, they came for their notebook checking. Teacher was very much annoyed. Teacher was expecting that all the students from roll number 1 till roll number 10, they will get their notebooks checked. But only 3 students came, roll number 1, roll number 2 and roll number 10, to get their notebooks checked. Teacher started asking for an explanation from the remaining students. Why you did not submit the notebooks? They said, Madam, you said roll number 1, 2 and 10. Roll number 1, 2, 10 will submit the notebooks. So roll number 1, 2, 10 have submitted the notebooks. Now there's a gap between communication. Teacher meant to say roll number 1, 2, 10. What does she mean to say 1 to 10? From roll number 1 till roll number 10, all 10 students will submit their notebooks. What the students interpreted, they thought the teacher wanted to say that roll number 1, roll number 2, roll number 10. These three students will submit their notebooks. Okay, so students did not got the message in the same sense in which the teacher wanted them to understand. There was a gap in communication. That gap should be removed through a proper feedback. Okay, so communication doesn't just mean conveying our feelings, conveying the information or views or facts or ideas, but sender must take a feedback from the receiver in order to ensure that receiver has got the message in the same sense. Fine. Now let us discuss certain definitions of communication. This definition, first definition, is given by Louis Allen. According to him, communication is the sum total of all the things one person does when he wants to create understanding in the mind of receiver. Again, the word understanding is here. When he wants to create understanding in the mind of another, it involves systematic and continuous process of telling, listening, and understanding. It is not a one-time activity that one said and communication is complete. It is a continuous process, telling, listening. Fine. Next definition is given by Harold Kuhns and Hennis Werich. Communication is transfer of information, of course, from the sender to the receiver, with the information being understood by the receiver. Again, understanding of the communication or information is very, very important in order to make communication process complete. Okay, bache? Now let's start with the communication process. Now, what do we need in communication process? Basically, we need two persons, one sender, another receiver. Only sender and receiver, do you think they will complete the communication process? Sender is there, receiver is there. Does that will that be enough for the communication process to get completed, Bache? There must be certain other elements as well. That is, there must be some idea, there must be some belief, there must be some information that has to be shared by the sender with the receiver. So communication process requires transmission of message from a sender to a receiver. Of course, these two are the important components, sender and receiver, and the third, of course, message that has to be communicated. So communication, effective communication, will definitely result in understanding. Let us see what are the other elements of communication process beside sender and receiver. Now see, this is the messenger. Messenger here means sender. He is the one who wants to share his information or idea with some other person. That other person is recipient, receiver of the message. Sender and receiver, these are the two elements of communication process. In between these two elements, many other components play their role, beta. The message, what is message? Message is the subject matter or the idea which a sender wants to communicate. The message has to be first encoded. Encoded means it has to be put into certain words or symbols or pictures so that it can be conveyed to the receiver. The message has been encoded. After the message has been encoded, sender decides the channel of communication, how the message will be passed on to the receiver, how he is going to send this message to the receiver, through internet, through WhatsApp, through some letter, through some uh, telephone. He has to choose the media. That is how the message will be transmitted to the receiver. Now the media has been chosen. After that, message has to be decoded. Decoded means interpreting the message, understanding the message in its simplest form so that receiver can get or understand the meaning of the message. Now whatever he understands, receiver, whatever he understands, that will determine his behavior or output. That will determine, we can get through his behavior or through the output, we can come to know whether receiver has understood the message or not. That is a sort of feedback. His behavior will reflect he has understood the message or not. So communication process involves many elements. Let us discuss these elements. These elements are, first of one is sender, then comes message, then message is encoded. After encoding of the message, a medium is chosen through which message will be passed on to the receiver. Then decoding. Decoding means interpretation of message. Once the message is interpreted, receiver receives the message in true sense. Fine. After that, feedback is taken whether receiver has got the message or not. It can be determined from his response, his behavior. Next element is noise. We'll be discussing all these elements one by one. Now, first element is sender. Sender means person. Which person? Who wants to convey his thoughts or ideas to the receiver. He is the source of information. He is the one who initiates the communication process. Sender could be the person or anything that causes the message to be sent. Sender is the encoder. He is the writer. He can be the speaker, depending on whether your message is written or oral. Just like you send a letter to your friend. In this case, you are a sender of the message. Okay? The sender is the person who conveys his thoughts or ideas to the other person. After sender is there. Next element is message. Message क्या है बेटा? It is the content of ideas, feelings, suggestions, orders, etc. Okay, to be able to communicate, we must have an idea. We must have some piece of information, any viewpoint, any belief. So, message is the core idea or the main idea that you wish to communicate. It is the subject matter of communication which has to be passed on to the receiver. Got it, beta? Now, the message is there. Now, message has to be encoded. Message has to be encoded means we have to convert the message into communication symbols like words, pictures, graphs, gestures, trends. As you can see, we can convey our message through written words, through graphs, pictures, pie charts, anything. Before an idea is transmitted, beta, it is very much necessary that it must be encoded. Message should be communicated as accurately as possible. Sender should take into account the knowledge, the background, education of the person to whom he is communicating. According to the level of the receiver, the message should be encoded. He should be able to understand the encoded words or symbols. Because if you are communicating in a way which cannot be understood by the receiver, it means you are wasting time. It will not be considered as an effective communication. So, encoding must be done thoughtfully, keeping in mind the needs of the receiver, their culture, their language, their level of education. Basically, message should be receiver oriented. We should take into consideration the requirements, the level of the receiver. According to him, we should encode the message. After the message is encoded, we have to decide how the message will be passed on, how it will be communicated to the receiver. That is the way by which message is communicated. It represents the path through which encoded message is transmitted to the receiver. Channel can be in written form, face-to-face, phone call, internet, etc. Whatever medium is chosen, it should be accessible to the receiver. Means receiver should have reach to that mean of communication. Like if we are communicating through some webinar or through some social media, receiver must have an online access and network connectivity. If he is not having an online access or network connectivity, he will not be able to get my message, beta. Fine. Medium should be that one which is easily accessible to the receiver. It should be selected keeping in mind the target receiver. Like advertisement is made in television or magazines or radio, keeping in mind the target audience. If we want to target a particular audience, we can give advertisement in a particular magazine. Like if our audience is sports only, sports players, so we can give advertisement in a sports magazine. We will not give advertisement in a women's magazine. Okay. A target audience, we should know the target audience. According to that, we should select the media. Similarly, in communication, we should select the media, we should select the path of communication considering the requirements or the availability of means of communication with the receiver. Now, the next element of communication process is decoding. What is decoding? It is the process of converting encoded symbols into understandable form by the receiver. That is interpretation of words or symbols or graphs or diagrams, whatever encoded message is sent by the sender into some understandable form. Reader or listener of the message tries to understand the message, gauge the meaning of message as per his knowledge or experience and values. Now comes the next element, that is receiver. It means the person who receives the communication of the sender. He is the person for whom the message is framed, for whom the communication process was initiated. He can be the reader or the listener of message, depending upon whether the communication is written or oral. Now, this is the most important element of communication, that is feedback. It includes all those actions of receiver, indicating that he has received and understood message of the receiver. Fine? It is basically the required response, or you can say reaction from the receiver. There could be various forms of feedback like answer of letter, supply of ordered goods, clarification of doubts by subordinates, asking of questions by the subordinates. Okay, this is the response we are getting. We have placed an order for the supply of ordered goods, and if we receive that order, that means we have got the feedback, we have got the response of the receiver. He has got my order and he has supplied the goods. If the subordinates are clarifying their doubts from the superior, that means they have listened the message, they have received the message, and they are clarifying the points which are not clear to them. So sender needs to make sure that receiver understands the message. Therefore, receiver's response to sender's communication is the feedback. Okay, it enables the sender to know that original message is understood or interpreted correctly by the receiver. Any error and flaw which arises in business situations, like this is not what I meant, this is not what I said, all this is due to lack of feedback. Feedback will help to improve the communication. Fine. Since communication is a two-way process, we have to get the response of the receiver, whether he has understood the message in the true sense or not. Okay. Now the next element of communication process is noise. Noise means any obstruction or hindrance to communication. This hindrance or bottleneck or interruption, it may be caused to sender, message, medium, receiver, or during encoding, decoding. This noise doesn't mean only that something which is audible noise, loud noise, doesn't mean that. Noise here means any obstruction, any barrier which obstruct the smooth flow of communication, which reduces the effectiveness of communication. Noise can arise at any stage in the entire process of communication. Fine. Message, it can arise at the time of message beta. Message, if the sender is not clear what he wants to convey to the receiver, he himself is not clear what he wants to convey, of course the communication will become ineffective. Fine. If he chooses a wrong medium, if he's using a telephone, via phone call, he is communicating with the person and there is very much noise nearby, a train is passing by while he's making a call to the receiver, maybe it is possible that receiver didn't get the message, the medium is not appropriate. Receiver, sometimes receiver's mental condition is not like that he is getting the message, he is not attentive, he is not paying attention. At that time also there might be a barrier, there might be a hindrance to communication. Further, it can also arise during encoding or decoding. While expressing the message, sender did not use proper words or symbols, he used wrong diagram. If the message is encoded in a wrong manner, of course receiver will not be able to get the gist or the true meaning of the message which sender wants to convey. It can also arise at the time of decoding also, beta. Okay, so many examples could be there of noise. It can be a poor telephone connection, it can be an inattentive receiver, it can be wrong or ambiguous symbols which result in faulty encoding. Gestures and postures, they might distort the message. Okay, faulty decoding, wrong meaning to the message, all these are the various obstacles or obstructions in the process of communication. Now, we have done the entire process of communication. Now, let us summarize it. There is a sender. Sender must have a message to be sent, and Further, he encoded the message. He put that message into words, symbols, graphs, pictures, or diagrams. After encoding the message, sender decides the channel of communication through internet, through WhatsApp, through telephone, through written form. Fine. Then receiver comes. Then the role of receiver comes. He receives the message, fine, and he decodes the message. He tries to understand the message better. Okay. He tries to understand the message, and the response of receiver will tell us whether he has understood the message or not. That is basically feedback. Now there is another element, that is noise. It can arise in the entire process of communication. The obstructions, the hindrance, the bottlenecks, they may arise at any point, at any element of communication may result in noise or disturbance. Now, let us see. Now, I have prepared this video. Fine. I am the one who is the center. I have used PowerPoint, pictures, words to convey the meaning of communication to you, to clarify the process of communication to you. So, I am the center. Fine. My message is what I want to convey. I want to make you understand the meaning of communication and process of communication. For that, I use different PPTs in which I use words, symbols, etc. The channel that I preferred for communicating with you is YouTube channel. I am communicating, I am sharing my video with you. The medium that I have chosen is YouTube channel. Now, receiver. Who is the receiver? You people who are watching my video, you people are the receiver. You have got my video and you are trying to understand this video. Now, if I get response from you in the form of more likes, that means you have understood my message also better. That is feedback. Okay, so the communication will be complete. This process of communication will be complete only if you like my video, if you subscribe to my channel. So do like my video and subscribe to it, so that this communication process gets complete. For the noise may arise at any point of time. Okay, in case any of my PPT, any one of the slide of my PPT is not clear to you, if there are certain doubts, if you are not attentive, if you have switched on the video but you are moving here and there, you are inattentive, then noise might arise. Okay, hope you have understood the process of communication. Thank you beta for watching this video. Thank you.